I was walking down the street at night after finishing my shift at a part-time job that I wasn't used to. Earlier in the day, my daughter-in-law Elena came back from shopping and made me help with the party preparations for an event I couldn't even attend, which made me twice as tired. But it was for my granddaughter Mina's celebration, and just imagining grandson Cleo being happy as a big brother kept me motivated. As I passed by the side of the house, I saw the lights were still on. I looked at the clock, and it was already past 9 p.m. It was time to put Cleo to bed. As I looked back at the house, I saw an unbelievable sight. There was Cleo, sitting alone in the yard, staring into the house. Why is Cleo outside?
Cleo! What's wrong?
As I ran up to him, he gave me a relieved smile, and then the next moment, his face crumpled, and he started to cry.
What happened? Why are you outside alone?
Cleo seemed like he wanted to say something, and then he spoke hesitantly. Today is Mina's birthday. It's a family-only celebration, so I'm not allowed inside. He whispered as he cried.
What? That's ridiculous.
Unable to bear it, I silently took Cleo's arm and walked out of the gate. Something that shouldn't have happened, happened again.
You haven't eaten anything since lunch, have you? Grandma is also tired from work and hungry. Let's go get something delicious to eat.
I tried to speak brightly in my usual tone to reassure Cleo. Cleo seemed to understand something and answered cheerfully. At the night restaurant, I left Cleo alone and stood up from my seat. Pretending to go to the drink corner, I took out my smartphone. It's been a long time since I contacted her. I wonder if she'll answer. After a few rings, I heard an irritated voice say, "Hello?" I introduced myself and apologized for calling at this late hour, then briefly explained Cleo's situation. The person on the other end said, "I'll be there right away," and hung up. After a while, a woman entered the restaurant. I looked towards the entrance and raised my hand. She noticed me and quickly came over to our table. Who? Cleo looked up at her with a puzzled expression, and she hugged him, unable to hold back her tears. Mom. Is that you? My name is Molly. I'm 57 years old. My husband passed away a year ago, and I live in the house he left behind. Our family consists of 5 people, my son, his wife, and my 2 grandchildren. My son, Jeffrey, has been divorced, and his current wife, Elena, is his second wife. The older grandchild, Cleo, is from Jeffrey's previous marriage, so he has no blood relation to Elena or the younger grandchild, Mina. 3 years ago, Jeffrey returned to this house with Cleo after his ex-wife cheated on him. At that time, Cleo, who was only 2 years old, was emotionally unstable and constantly looked for his mother in this unfamiliar house. Seeing Cleo like that, I took great care of him, making sure he was comfortable. The following year, Jeffrey brought Elena to meet me.
Mother, I'm going to marry her,
he announced suddenly, shocking me. So that's what he had been doing while he wasn't home much, busy with work and other things. Even though my biological son was emotionally unstable, he neglected him to have fun with someone else. I was so taken aback that I couldn't say anything to my own son.
And she's pregnant,
he added, surprising me even more. Sorry for the sudden news, but please take care of us, Elena said.
We thought it'd be easier to stay here since this house is big and has extra rooms. That's all right, right?
Jeffrey asked with an audacious attitude. But how could I kick them out, knowing there was a child on the way? And so, our life together with my son's family and my grandchildren began. I don't know what Jeffrey's ex-wife was like since we lived apart, but Elena didn't do much housework. I saw her getting along well with Cleo, so she probably wasn't a bad person. However, she used her pregnancy as an excuse to leave all the housework to me. Honestly, I was working part-time, so I asked her to help out a little with the housework. I have terrible morning sickness. My stomach is tight, and it's tough. She always had an excuse. Hearing that, I couldn't force her to do anything. Even though she looked perfectly healthy to me, I couldn't say anything because the difficulties of pregnancy vary from person to person. I feel like I'm being pushed around. That's what I thought, but my husband, who used to listen to my concerns, was no longer with us.
She says she's having a hard time, so be more considerate. No one wants a strict mother-in-law these days. By the way, when's dinner ready?
When I talked to Jeffrey once, he just brushed it off with that.
Oh, I'm sorry for troubling you with such things.
Every day was a struggle to keep my heavy heart in check. While we were living these days, Mina was born. When Cleo was born, we were living far apart, so I didn't get to see him much. Living with a baby nearby brings such happiness. Of course, that doesn't mean I love Cleo any less. Witnessing the birth of a new life made Cleo's eyes sparkle. The pride of becoming an older brother. He felt a sense of responsibility to protect his little sister. I could sense those feelings from him. I vowed in my heart to love both of these young ones equally, without comparing them. As Mina's upbringing began, Elena became increasingly harsh towards Cleo. Cleo was not her own child, and after giving birth to her biological daughter, Mina, her affection naturally shifted more towards Mina. Some women can become irritable postpartum, so I thought it was somewhat understandable. I could make up for it by supporting Cleo more. That's what I told myself, deciding to leave it alone, but Elena's behavior only worsened. Even so, Cleo probably wanted to believe in the Elena who had been kind to him before. He would volunteer to help out and try to gain her favor. One day, when I returned home from my morning part-time job, I could hear Elena's yelling from outside.
Why can't you even do this right? You've just made more work for me.
It seemed she was scolding Cleo. When I went to check, I saw that Cleo had tried to make Mina's formula and had spilled the milk powder all over.
Now. He's just a child, there's no need to get so angry. It's the thought that counts, right?
I tried to calm Elena down.
This is no place for you to talk. If you're going to that, instead clean that formula that's all over the floor.
She snapped back. The feeling of being yelled at by a mother, even if she is not his biological mother, is indescribable for a child. Sadness, frustration, regret. Seeing Cleo with tears in his eyes, holding back all these emotions, filled me with pity.
I'll clean this up, Cleo. You did your best.
I hugged Cleo, comforting and calming him down, before cleaning up the milk powder that had scattered all over the floor.
Mina, don't make clumsy mistakes like your brother. Your brother is completely useless.
Elena said, looking down at us and then addressing Mina, who couldn't even understand her words yet. I struggled to contain my anger towards Elena, who ignored Cleo entirely. At dinner that evening, Cleo was nowhere to be seen, so I asked Elena.
Where's Cleo?
I don't know.
Maybe he ran away because I scolded him.
Elena responded nonchalantly. There's no way that's true. Cleo is only 4 years old. Where could he possibly run away to? Just then, Jeffrey came home.
Jeffrey, I can't find Cleo anywhere.
I said to him. He's a boy. Maybe he went to the park nearby.
Anyway, Mina, I'm home.
He replied, showing no concern. Even if he is a boy, it's already past 7 p.m. Even if he went to the park alone, wouldn't that worry him? While the two of them started eating the dinner I had prepared, I rushed outside. I searched the nearby park, the route to his kindergarten, and the supermarket we often go to. But Cleo was nowhere to be found. Maybe he's back home by now. I thought as I returned home and reached for the front door, but then I heard a metallic clanging sound coming from the yard. Our yard isn't very big, but we have a small garage. The sound seemed to be coming from there. No, it can't be. That's impossible. I approached the garage cautiously. I heard the sound of someone knocking on the door and a faint voice.
Cleo! Is that you, Cleo?
I flung the door open, and there was Cleo, sitting with his face swollen from crying, sobbing quietly.
This is just too cruel.
I picked Cleo up and rushed to the two people who were likely eating dinner. Seeing my furious face, they exchanged uneasy glances.
What is the meaning of this?
I demanded, still holding the softly crying Cleo. Well, I just found out from Elena. Jeffrey stammered. I shot him a sharp look before turning to Elena, who showed no remorse and said,
It's Cleo's fault. He ruined Mina's milk.
What are these two talking about? Do they lock a small child in the garage for a small mistake? How could they sit and eat dinner, pretending nothing happened after hearing that? I couldn't help but raise my voice.
What are you saying? You're the one who made this little child try to prepare the milk. Even so, this is too much. Elena, don't you have any sense of responsibility as a mother?
My outburst made Jeffrey intervene. Calm down, Mom. Elena is exhausted from taking care of Mina. Cut her some slack.
If you knew about it, you're just as guilty. Locking a 4-year-old in a small, dark place like that.
I couldn't finish my sentence. I did try to stop her, thinking it was too much. Jeffrey added defensively. Jeffrey seemed to be trying to place all the blame on Elena. Elena shot a glare at him.
Before stopping her, you should have let Cleo out. Are you even his father?
Facing the two who had fallen silent, I gave them one more warning.
If something like this happens again, you'll both have to leave this house.
But that's... Jeffrey stammered, while Elena, head bowed, refused to meet my gaze. Having said that much, I hoped this would never happen again. Ignoring the two, I took Cleo to the bath, gave him a reheated dinner, and tucked him into a warm bed. During all this, Cleo kept defending them.
It was my fault, Grandma. I made Mom angry. It's not her fault. Dad just got home and was tired and hungry.
The more he tried to protect them, the more it broke my heart. I resolved to keep a close eye on their actions from then on. Although the two never apologized, I was more concerned about Cleo's well-being. Despite what he had gone through, Cleo continued to be helpful around the house, never losing his smile. Whether it was my constant vigilance or genuine remorse, there were no further harsh incidents toward Cleo. Although Elena sometimes made Cleo do excessive chores and was occasionally harsh, Cleo would say,
Grandma, I'm fine. I want to help Mom. And I love Mina. I'm the big brother, so I have to be responsible.
With such earnestness, I couldn't bring myself to intervene. Interfering too much might worsen Elena's mood, potentially leading to more harsh treatment of Cleo. I wanted to avoid that at all costs. Despite my concerns, the two's treatment of Cleo gradually returned to how it was before Mina was born. Relief and peace returned to our household. I eventually felt at ease and resumed our usual routine. 2 months had passed since that dreadful incident. Life had been calm and peaceful. One day, my manager at the part-time job asked me to change my shift. Normally, I worked only in the mornings, but they couldn't find enough staff for the evening to closing shift. After Cleo's incident, I had reduced my working days. Being unable to refuse, I agreed to the shift change.
Oh? Molly, aren't you going to your part-time job today?
Noticing me at home during my usual working hours, Elena asked curiously.
I had a shift change today, so I'm working from the evening. So, you'll need to handle dinner tonight,
I replied. Elena made a face, clearly annoyed, but then her expression brightened as if she had an idea. Well then, since it's a special occasion, why don't we celebrate Mina's birthday a bit early tonight? Elena exclaimed, knowing full well I wouldn't be home because of my part-time job. Clearly, I wasn't invited to this party. I, too, wanted to celebrate my dear grandchild's first birthday. All right, I need to start preparing for the party right away. I'll tell Jeffrey to come home early too. Elena, oblivious to my feelings, seemed delighted. Molly, I'm going shopping, so please look after Mina. Since you can't join the party, at least do that much. Using the shopping trip as an excuse, she was giving me some time alone with Mina. How selfish can she be? I was tired of arguing, so I took Mina and let Elena go shopping. That night, after finishing my shift at an unusual time, I walked home along the dark streets. Having helped Elena with the party preparations, despite not being able to participate myself, had doubled my fatigue. But thinking about celebrating Mina and seeing Cleo's happy face kept me going. As I walked past the side of the house, I noticed the lights were still on. It was already past 9 p.m. I needed to tuck Cleo in soon. I hope they don't make me do the cleanup too, I thought. When I looked toward the house again, I couldn't believe my eyes. There, sitting alone in the yard, was Cleo, staring into the house. I couldn't understand why Cleo was outside. I quickly went around to the front gate and hurried into the yard.
Cleo! What's wrong?
When he saw me rushing towards him, he smiled with relief, but then his face crumpled, and he started crying.
What happened? Why are you outside alone?
I knew I shouldn't overwhelm him with questions, but I couldn't help it. Cleo just sobbed and clung to me, unable to speak.
Let's go inside, okay?
He looked at me with a surprised expression, as if wanting to say something. Then, in a voice full of apology, he whispered, Today's Mina's birthday, but it's a family-only celebration, so I'm not allowed inside. He cried as he spoke.
This is unbelievable!
Unable to bear it any longer, I silently took Cleo's hand, led him out of the gate, and started walking. This shouldn't have happened again. What's wrong, grandmother? Are you angry? Where are we going? His anxious voice brought me back to my senses.
You've been outside all day without eating anything, right? And grandmother is tired from work and hungry too. Let's go eat something delicious.
I tried to speak cheerfully, in my usual tone, to reassure Cleo. Sensing something, Cleo responded brightly. I was worried that people might look at us strangely for bringing a child to a restaurant at night. But neither the customers nor the staff seemed to care. Leaving Cleo alone at the table, I stood up.
I'm going to get some juice.
Pretending to go get some juice, I took out my smartphone. I haven't contacted them in a long time, but I hope they answer. After a few rings, a grumpy voice answered, Hello? I introduced myself and apologized for calling so late. I briefly explained Cleo's current situation. The person on the other end quickly said, I'll be there right away, and hung up. When I returned to the table, Cleo was eating the fries we had ordered.
That took a while,
he said, looking at me with concern while sipping the orange juice I placed on the table.
I couldn't decide what you might want to drink.
I excused myself, but Cleo quickly brightened up. I love orange juice, he said cheerfully and drank it down in one gulp. He's only 5 years old. Even at this late hour in a restaurant, he doesn't act excited. He sits quietly, waits patiently, and is mindful of others' feelings. Why does such a good child have to go through this? I felt a surge of frustration as I watched Cleo munch on his fries. After finishing his fries, Cleo seemed restless.
How about we order a hamburger too?
I suggested. Won't we get in trouble if we don't go home soon? Cleo's expression was tense. Even though he said that, we couldn't go home just yet. I wondered how to explain it to Cleo. Just then, a woman entered the restaurant. I looked towards the entrance and raised my hand to signal her. The woman noticed and hurried over to our table. Cleo looked up at her with a puzzled expression, as if to say, "Who is this?" Unable to hold back her tears, the woman embraced Cleo tightly. The person I called earlier was Cleo's biological mother, Kaylin. Mom. Cleo remembered. Jeffrey divorced Kaylin when Cleo was 2 years old, 3 years ago. Still, Cleo remembered his real mother. When he first came to our house, he was longing for her mother. And Kaylin, too, had never forgotten about Cleo for even a moment. After waiting for the two to calm down from their tears, I told Kaylin what had happened up until now. How Elena had been harsh to Cleo. How Cleo had been locked in the garage after spilling formula. And today, how she was thrown out of Mina's birthday party, being told she wasn't family. I'm sorry. I should have watched her more carefully. No. Molly, it's not your fault. You protected Cleo all this time, didn't you? And you called me. I had heard from Jeffrey that Kaylin had an affair, which was why they divorced, so I hesitated to call her. But it seemed the truth was different from what I imagined. Because Kaylin is Cleo's real mother. I called you on such a simple thought, but was it a bother? I mean, do you have a new partner or family? I asked hesitantly. Then Kaylin raised her voice.
No, I don't. I only ever wanted Cleo.
What could this mean? When I told her the story I heard from Jeffrey about the divorce, Kaylin turned pale and began to speak. It was Jeffrey and that woman who had an affair. Looking sadly at Cleo, who had fallen asleep from exhaustion, Kaylin told me the truth. Jeffrey and Elena had started their relationship around the time Cleo was born. Then, suddenly, a man claiming to be a lawyer appeared in front of Kaylin. This man, claiming to be a lawyer, brought documents about Kaylin's affair and neglect of Cleo, talked about the divorce with Jeffrey, the compensation in the divorce trial, and the subsequent child support. Kaylin had no memory of such things, but had no one to rely on. She had lost her parents early and was completely alone. After marrying Jeffrey, she had become estranged from her friends. Being a housewife, she was always with baby Cleo, so even when she went out, her interactions with neighbors were just greetings. In such weak human relationships, it was difficult to gather evidence that she hadn't done anything. My vision darkened.
You could have relied on me.
But at that time, I was so shocked by Jeffrey's betrayal that I even doubted you, Molly. Kaylin confessed apologetically. I felt ashamed of my son's actions and hated myself for not keeping in closer contact with Kaylin at that time. I'm truly sorry. So, are you still paying that child support now? Yes. My parents left me a little money. Also, I reconnected with my previous workplace from before I got married. Somehow, I've been able to pay the child support without fail for Cleo's sake. I couldn't listen any longer. Unaware of any of this, I had been living peacefully with that couple. I don't know how to apologize enough. It's okay. Molly, you did nothing wrong. And now, I've finally met Cleo. That alone made paying the child support worthwhile. Kaylin's expression was calm. By the way, Cleo's custody does belong to Jeffrey, But you haven't been seeing Cleo? I brought up what had been bothering me all this time. As expected, Kaylin's face darkened. Not even once since the divorce was finalized until today. She answered in a small voice. How could this be? I couldn't contain my emotions any longer.
Kaylin, I've made up my mind. Cleo's parents aren't those two. It's only you. I won't let them take Cleo away from you again.
Kaylin looked at me in surprise. Then, as if strongly agreeing with my determination, she nodded firmly. The truth is, I haven't been doing nothing either. Kaylin said that she had already hired a lawyer and was moving to claim the child support that was fraudulently demanded in compensation for the divorce trial from Jeffrey and Elena. According to Kaylin's lawyer, the lawyer that Jeffrey and Elena had arranged was actually not a lawyer at all, but just a friend of theirs. I'll help too. For Cleo's sake. Thus, in the middle of the night at a restaurant, Kaylin and I teamed up. For the next 3 months, I pretended everything was normal, going about my daily life. Of course, I was extremely careful to ensure Cleo wasn't harmed. One day, Kaylin and her lawyer came to our house. The two were startled and flustered, but I calmed them down and had them take a seat. And what is your business today? Jeffrey looked puzzled, while Elena put on a brave front. We're here today to discuss the compensation for the divorce trial with you and Jeffrey and to negotiate for Cleo's custody. Kaylin responded calmly, not backing down. Compensation for the divorce trial. That must be about Kaylin, right? Jeffrey told me all about it. Elena said, mocking her ex-wife. Of course, he would have said so, since you were Jeffrey's affair partner.
What a ridiculous accusation. I met Jeffrey after he divorced you.
Jeffrey just sat there silently, listening to the exchange between his ex-wife and his current wife. Now, both of you. Let's first hear what the lawyer has to say. Knowing everything but pretending to know nothing, I subtly guided the conversation to Kaylin's turn. Please take a look at these documents. The lawyer spread out the report prepared by the fake lawyer that Elena and Jeffrey had arranged. This is the report handed over by Jeffrey's lawyer when Jeffrey and Kaylin got divorced.
How can something from so long ago be used as evidence?
Elena was visibly flustered. What about it? I hired a proper lawyer. As Jeffrey tried to support Elena, Kaylin's lawyer cut in, almost interrupting him. Is that really a lawyer? Which law firm is he from? Ignoring the stammering Jeffrey, the lawyer continued. As a fellow lawyer, I must say this report lacks credibility. The photographic evidence is clearly fabricated, and the testimonies regarding Kaylin's alleged neglect are too vague.
But that evidence was enough to make this woman divorce Jeffrey.
Elena desperately argued. Indeed, Kaylin did comply and get divorced at the time. However, the demanded child support was excessively high. And despite paying child support properly, she hasn't been allowed to see her child even once, has she? That's because Cleo didn't want to see her. No way. I screamed internally. After the divorce, when Cleo came to us, how much did she long for her mother? I began to tremble with anger. Even so, she did neglect her child, right? The testimony was taken, even if it's vague. Elena, regaining some of her composure, argued. Would you like to see the child care diary I kept at the time? Kaylin took out a notebook. It was an ordinary, well-worn B5 size notebook. The cover read Cleo's child care diary. That can be written at any time after the fact. However, as Kaylin silently showed the contents of the notebook, the color drained from Elena's face. It was filled with detailed records of Cleo's feedings, diaper changes, and sleep times, down to the date, day of the week, and time. At the end of each day, there was a brief diary entry from Kaylin. Messages to Cleo could also be seen in the empty spaces. Elena, raising a 1-year-old Mina, should understand. Could someone who neglected their child write such a detailed childcare diary? Elena was at a loss for words. Seeing Elena's reaction, Jeffrey looked utterly confused. He probably couldn't understand, having never properly participated in childcare. In this diary, there are also entries regarding Jeffrey's actions. My actions. Jeffrey was already exhausted. It mentions when you said you were working late or going on business trips. Kaylin added with a tone implying that Jeffrey knew exactly what she was talking about.
You can't expose an affair with just a diary.
Elena's point was valid. A diary alone wouldn't serve as proof. That's the part that took some effort. Elena looked triumphantly at Kaylin, but then began to look uneasy as if she had remembered something. I kept Jeffrey's credit card statements. After we divorced, I found them tucked away in our household account book. Neither Elena nor Jeffrey seemed willing to argue. On the days mentioned in the diary when Jeffrey claimed to be on a business trip, the credit card statements show charges from a hot spring inn. Ignoring the silent pair, Kaylin continued. And on the same days, a certain woman's social media posts have photos. The hashtags include the inn's name and words like secret.
That's just a coincidence. It could happen to anyone.
Elena's resistance seemed futile. Indeed. But this woman, despite talking about secrets, was showing off her possessions. Kaylin pressed further. The watch in these photos, that's Jeffrey's, isn't it? I could almost hear Elena and Jeffrey's hearts pounding.
That could be any watch.
So Elena didn't know. This was a gift from my husband and me to Kaylin and Jeffrey when they got married. It's a pair watch, completely custom-made. Feigning innocence, I interjected.
That can't be.
After a moment of silence. Enough. Jeffrey said in a pitiful voice. Kaylin signaled to the lawyer with her eyes. Since he's admitted it, that helps. We will proceed with a settlement instead of going to court.
I won't admit it. I'll take this to court if I have to.
Elena shouted, but the facade was crumbling. Shall we discuss the matter of the falsified report by the fake lawyer? We've already spoken with this fake lawyer.
That bastard.
It turned out that the fake lawyer was Elena's friend and former boyfriend. They had been funneling the compensation from Kaylin's divorce settlement and child support to him. When we mentioned charges of document forgery, he told us everything. Elena seemed to have no energy left to argue. From the crack in the door. Mom? What's going on? Cleo peeked in.
Nothing at all.
Kaylin, looking relieved, replied.
Let's go home. To our new home, Mom and Cleo's new home.
Later, the case went to court instead of being settled out of court. This time, the other side hired a real lawyer. However, the outcome was clear. Custody of Cleo was transferred to Kaylin. Jeffrey and Elena's actions were deemed criminal. Additionally, they were required to return the fraudulent compensation and child support they had received, and pay Kaylin proper compensation and child support. Jeffrey and Elena ended up blaming each other and ultimately got divorced. Elena was disowned by her family, and her parents took custody of Mina. She was now deep in debt and working at a massage parlor. Naturally, I also cut ties with Jeffrey. Who would take care of a criminal? I sold the house I used to live in and now enjoy living alone, free and comfortable. Jeffrey is still paying Kaylin, but I have no interest in where he is or what he's doing. As for Kaylin, she and Cleo sometimes come to visit me. We're like friends now. It turns out she's getting along well with the lawyer from that time. When they visit, she often seeks my advice on her love life, and he gets along well with Cleo. One day, while Kaylin was seeking my advice, Cleo suddenly said, "Mom, I like it when you're smiling. And I have the most fun when you're with that guy." A year has passed since then. Today, Kaylin and Cleo are coming to visit. I couldn't wait and went outside to greet them. Soon, I saw them walking toward me. Cleo was holding Kaylin's hand, looking out for her.
He's such a kind child.
"Molly, did you come out just for us?" "Thank you."
It's nothing. I was looking forward to it too. And
I took Kaylin's bag and looked at her swollen belly.
you're not alone anymore.
I can't wait to meet the baby. Dad is excited too. Seeing their happy faces, I smiled. Outside, the air was warm with the promise of spring. My name is Lily. I'm a 32-year-old working mother. When I first got married, I worked in customer service, but due to the impact of the pandemic, I became a target for staff reductions, and since then I've been working from home. I always preferred working alone, doing meticulous tasks over customer service or being in the public eye, and I enjoyed making accessories and stuffed toys by hand. However, these were just hobbies, and I never considered showing or selling them to anyone. But then, a friend posted my work on social media, which caught the eye of a shop owner who sold small items, and I got the chance to have my work displayed there. Eventually, reviews from the customers have increased sales, and now I can make a living from it. Unlike when I made things as a hobby, now I have to incorporate customer requests, deal with deadlines, and face other challenges, but it's far more fulfilling than doing a job I wasn't suited for. Despite this, I have some concerns about my family at the moment. It's about my husband, Ethan, and my mother-in-law, Rosie. Ethan was a salaryman, but after I started working from home and my business took off, he was influenced by it and suddenly quit his job one day. Without consulting me at all, he just suddenly quit. Naturally, I asked Ethan,
Why didn't you talk to me about this?
Ethan, with a serious look on his face, answered,
Seeing you shine doing what you love made me envious. I want to live my life without regrets too. I know it'll be a burden for a while, but please understand.
When he said that, I couldn't help but feel guilty for blaming him entirely. After all, when I was laid off from my previous job and had no income, Ethan covered our living expenses despite his complaints. With my current income, we could manage even if Ethan was unemployed. I reconsidered and said to Ethan, "Okay. Take your time and find a job that you're satisfied with," showing understanding and encouragement. Since then, Ethan has been at home and started doing housework, which he never did before. Thanks to that, my work progressed smoothly, and I was able to take on more orders, gradually increasing my income. After a few months, our lifestyle of me working in my room and Ethan being a house husband became established, and I felt no discomfort or dissatisfaction. However, there is one person who absolutely doesn't like this arrangement. That's Rosie. She believes that men should work outside to support the family while women should support men and take care of the home. While this belief itself isn't bad, Rosie tries to impose it on us. She doesn't understand the concept of working from home and, no matter how many times I explain it.
How is that different from being a bum? You're just playing at home, so stop that and focus on housework and having children.
She refuses to understand. Even when I explained Ethan's current situation and that we wouldn't be able to live without my income, she just one-sidedly said,
Ethan has always been smart and capable, so he'll find a better paying job soon. It's your duty as his wife to support him to do that, but instead, you're getting a big head with this hobby like work and keeping Ethan trapped at home. It's your fault Ethan can't work.
It's tough to focus on work when she says such things over the phone or visits unannounced. When I complained to Ethan, he just said,
"She's from an older generation, so try to manage until I find a job,"
and didn't intervene. Even though I have no complaints about our current lifestyle, the stress from Rosie is building up, and I worry it might explode one day. Before doing anything else, I wanted to find a solution. As I thought about it, I began to worry about the future. What was Ethan thinking? Looking at Ethan now, it didn't seem like he was job hunting, and I wondered if this situation would continue indefinitely. But if I told him to find a job quickly, it might hurt his pride and lead to a fight. I couldn't say anything because I felt guilty about having an income and leaving the housework to Ethan. Then one day, Ethan said,
"I found a job. I finally found a job I want to do for the rest of my life,"
Ethan said with shining eyes. Seeing that expression for the first time in a while made me happy too, so I asked what kind of job it was. Ethan replied,
"A web writer."
I was surprised and a doubt arose in me.
A writer? Can you really become one that easy?
Ethan had previously worked in sales, and I had never heard that he was good at writing. I had never heard of him having any connections in publishing or related fields. I had seen on TV that it was a popular job among stay-at-home moms recently, but I also knew that it took a long time to make a living unless you were a true professional.
"It'll be fine. It seems tough at first, but once I get more projects, I'll start earning quickly. Like you, I'll be working from home, and being a writer sounds cool, doesn't it?"
Ignoring my worries, Ethan was happily talking about the job.
"Did you choose that job just because it sounds cool?"
Ethan showed a displeased expression at my question.
"So what? The reason doesn't matter. You started because you liked it too, right?"
Well, that's true, but... In contrast to the enthusiastic Ethan, I felt uneasy.
"What genre of writing are you going to do?"
Well, various kinds at first. Ethan's vague answer made me even more worried.
"Don't worry so much. I'll catch up to your income soon,"
Ethan said, giving a big smile and a thumbs up. Internally, I was exasperated, but if I said anything to Ethan now...
What, acting all high and mighty?
So, I said nothing. I was anxious, but Ethan's point was valid. It might be tough at first, but once he gets the hang of it, it could stabilize. I had experienced the same thing, so I shouldn't dismiss Ethan's chosen job. Maybe Ethan had a hidden talent in this field and would truly flourish. Someday, Ethan might be writing articles about my work. It might not just be a dream. In the midst of my worries, I found this faint dream and decided to support Ethan, but this decision turned out to be a big mistake. Without any preliminary knowledge or research, Ethan started, but he struggled even with short assignments, sitting in front of the computer all day, constantly frustrated. Of course, he didn't do any housework either, just sat in front of the computer, pulling his hair. Whenever I said something, he would snap at me, and I found myself watching his mood even in casual conversations. This meant I had to do all the housework, interrupting my work. Even so, I told myself that everything is tough at first, and once he got used to it, he would be more relaxed, so I didn't complain to Ethan. A few more months passed. Ethan's income, which was about $100 at first, started to increase gradually. Although it wasn't enough to live on, the fact that Ethan had worked hard was undeniable, so I praised and encouraged him as much as possible. However, from that time, Ethan's behavior became strange. About the project. Or, that client said. He started saying things like this more often than not, which are industry terms. He seemed to be acting like a seasoned writer. Mysteriously, condescending remarks from him began to stand out more frequently. Still, I figured everyone goes through phases where they get a little full of themselves, so I showed some understanding while secretly rolling my eyes and letting it slide. If it had been just that, it would have been cute, but Rosie's grand misunderstanding started and her harassment towards me escalated.
You know, Ethan is really amazing. He's able to get results in such a short period of time,
she said triumphantly to me. Sure, he started working, but was it really something to say with such a face? But then Rosie's next words made me furrow my brows.
While you've been doing nothing at home, Ethan has already surpassed your income. You need to quit your job and start having children.
What? Ethan surpassed my income. I couldn't grasp the meaning of Rosie's words and fell silent.
It looks like you're speechless. You should be grateful to have a husband as capable as Ethan. Honestly, you're not cut out to be a wife,
she continued.
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying. Ethan surpassed my income? Did he tell you that?
Yes, he did.
He's been crying about how hard it is to do all the housework every day. If you can't take care of Ethan, give him back to me.
As I started to see what was going on, I decided it would be better to talk to Ethan instead of arguing with her. I nodded appropriately, gently ushered Rosie out, and waited for Ethan to come home. In the evening, Ethan, who had been out pretending to be a savvy writer covering a cafe article, came back. I told him what Rosie had said to me during the day.
What have you been telling Rosie? She seems to be really misunderstanding things.
When I said that, Ethan started to panic.
Huh. I'm not sure. Maybe I didn't explain it well?
Seeing Ethan's reaction, I was convinced he was lying.
You don't have to tell the whole truth, but it's hard for me when you make it sound like everything is my fault. Rosie hasn't liked me from the start, and I want you to clear up this misunderstanding.
When I said this, Ethan's eyes suddenly flashed with anger, as if he felt accused.
Shut up. Men have pride, you know. Can't you go along with a little lie?
Sorry. Startled by Ethan's sudden shout, I apologized reflexively. But Ethan said,
I'm feeling sick of this,
and stormed out. When did Ethan become like this? He wasn't always this difficult. He used to be a bit childish, but he never had such temper tantrums. Is it my fault? Did he hate that I left the housework to him? Did my higher income hurt him? But even so, I can't just quit my job so easily, and things won't change overnight. What should I do? I couldn't sleep at all, and Ethan didn't come home that night. The next morning, I heard the front door open and thought it was Ethan. But it wasn't Ethan, it was Rosie.
Oh, what? Have you been crying? Haven't slept?
You look awful. Seeing my face, Rosie said with a snicker.
Where's Ethan?
I was so surprised that I couldn't respond, as I thought Ethan had gone to Rosie's place.
Can't even answer properly?
Rosie sat on the sofa. Just then, Ethan came back.
Huh? Mom, what are you doing here so early in the morning?
Ethan looked surprised to see Rosie.
I figured you haven't been eating well, so I decided to make you breakfast. I also brought plenty of side dishes,
Rosie said, pulling out numerous containers from a paper bag.
By the way, Ethan, where were you headed so early in the morning?
Rosie asked, and Ethan, looking slightly flustered, replied,
Just for a walk.
Then, turning to me,
Right, Lily?
He added. Ethan's flustered reaction made me feel a growing sense of unease. When I didn't respond, Ethan tried to cover it up by overly praising Rosie's homemade treats.
Honestly, any decent wife would get up earlier than her husband to prepare breakfast. But look at you, with your puffy face, still in your pajamas, just standing there. Poor Ethan,
Rosie said smugly, glancing at me sideways. Then Ethan joined in with Rosie, saying,
"Exactly, Mom, tell her."
Rosie's snide remarks only happened when Ethan wasn't around, and whenever I told Ethan, he would just laugh it off. But now, right in front of me, Ethan was teaming up with Rosie to insult me. And he was doing it with a carefree smile I'd never seen before.
Calling that hobby of yours work. You have no idea how different it is from a man's job. Right? I should have opposed this marriage. Mom, this is delicious. You're the best,
Ethan said loudly, deliberately, while shoveling food into his mouth, and Rosie lounged on the sofa as if it were her own home. At that moment, I felt truly miserable for the first time.
Hey! At least make some coffee. You really have no sense, do you?
The instant Rosie said that, something snapped inside me. I grabbed Rosie by the arm and forcibly pushed her out, locking and chaining the door. Rosie started shouting from outside.
Hey! What are you doing?
I stood in front of the door as Ethan tried to unlock it.
What was that about? Are you both enjoying bullying me? What's your deal? And where were you last night? Shut up. Just open the door. No! I'm talking to you. I won't move until you answer me. Shut up.
Ethan shoved me aside and opened the door.
What's wrong with you? You're a horrible woman. Apologize to Mom.
Even with both of them yelling at me, I kept my mouth tightly shut.
You've got to be kidding me. Think about what you've done.
Ethan spat those words at me and left with Rosie. As Ethan walked past me, I caught a faint scent of soap. It's over. The moment I said it out loud, I couldn't stop the tears. Ethan hadn't changed. He had always been like this, I just failed to see it. The fact that I earned more only highlighted his true nature. As for where Ethan was last night, a woman's intuition shouldn't be underestimated. I could guess. I didn't want to know, but maybe I needed to find out. I wanted to lie down, but I had a lot of work piled up. I washed my tears away with cold water and headed to my workshop. The next day, Ethan and Rosie showed up as if nothing had happened. Then she said, "Have you reflected on your behavior?" "Well, it doesn't matter. Ethan and I talked it over last night. I'm moving in today to live with you."
What?
That's right. Moving in.
Ethan's suffering like this is unfair, so I'll be here to supervise you.
Right, Ethan?
Yeah. You can learn a lot from Mom about being a proper wife.
They looked at me, but it was as if they were talking to themselves, disregarding my presence.
Is Rosie going to live here?
That's what I've been saying, isn't it? You really lack comprehension, don't you? Listen, you were living it up on just $500 a month and taking advantage of Ethan, right? You're only able to stay here because Ethan makes $10,000 a month. You should be grateful to Ethan for your lifestyle. When I looked at Ethan's face, he seemed to know he was lying and avoided my gaze. However, he smiled next to Rosie, as if to say he had an ally. Seeing that, I realized I couldn't stay with him any longer. All right. I'll divorce Ethan. Enjoy your life with him and his $500 monthly income. When I said that, Rosie laughed at me. Huh? What are you talking about? Spouting such sore loser nonsense. Oh well. If you want a divorce, go ahead. It's what I wanted all along. Just leave. Rosie didn't notice Ethan starting to panic. Understood. Ethan, I'll contact you later about the proceedings. I said this and packed a suitcase with some clothes and essential work tools. I'll be in touch.
Wait a minute.
Ethan hurried after me, but... Ethan, there's no need to stop her. Rosie clung to Ethan's arm as I quickly left the house. It didn't take long for Rosie to learn all the facts. I promptly arranged for a lawyer and moving company and terminated the apartment lease. From early morning, movers started taking out my belongings, causing Ethan and Rosie to frantically call me one after the other.
What is this? What's going on?
Rosie yelled over the phone, but I remained calm. You said if I wanted a divorce, go ahead, didn't you? So, I'm just moving my things out. The apartment lease is terminated, so please leave by the end of this month.
Huh? Why?
Why? Because the lease was in my name, I paid the initial fees, and I was the one paying the rent. The furniture and appliances were bought when we first got married, so I'll leave them for you. Ethan took over the phone and shouted,
Hey! You can't just do this. I supported you when you were unemployed too.
True, but it was only for a few months, right? I've supported you financially much more. I also turned a blind eye when you used my card for expenses and such.
But this is outrageous. Pay me compensation. Yeah. Pay us compensation.
Rosie screamed beside Ethan, but thanks to my mental rehearsals over the past few days, I could speak smoothly. Compensation, you say? Did you think I wouldn't notice? I was aware of your affair. I have the evidence. At my words, Ethan fell silent for a moment, and the phone was handed back to Rosie.
You, with your lack of feminine charm. An affair? That won't get you compensation. It's not even a valid reason for divorce.
Rosie, do you remember destroying my work tools, calling them worthless toys? And it wasn't just once or twice, was it? I've submitted photos of the broken tools, receipts from their purchase, and emails documenting the delays they caused to my lawyer. Do you still call them excuses? When I said that, Rosie shrieked.
Just show your face. Come here right now.
You'll hear from my lawyer soon. Save what you have to say for the meeting. Looking forward to it. With that, I hung up the phone. A meeting was arranged later. I braced myself, wondering what kind of expressions Ethan and Rosie would have after having cursed me so fiercely before. However, Ethan and Rosie had completely lost their momentum. Ethan must have finally understood the situation he was in. Rosie, too, seemed to have realized the reality of her supposedly brilliant son and kept her head down. As the lawyer calmly stated the facts of Ethan's infidelity and the conditions for divorce, Ethan suddenly collapsed onto the table and began to cry.
Please forgive me. I was just frustrated. You make more money than me and do what you love for a living. But I couldn't tell Mom, and I took advantage of your kindness. I just wanted to show off a little. That's right. Ethan did nothing wrong. You understand, don't you? A man has his pride. You get it, right? Please reconsider the divorce.
Beside Ethan, Rosie was dramatically crying with her face in her hands. It was obvious they were trying to gain sympathy. I knew all about Ethan's reckless spending with my card, his failed attempt to buy a luxury car in my name because he couldn't sign the contract without me, and the expensive gifts he bought for his affair partner. Hearing them talk about a man's pride after all that just made me laugh.
Rosie, you said that it was only natural for Ethan to cheat on me because I lacked attractiveness as a woman, didn't you? You even said it would be a blessing if we divorced. So why are you trying to stop this divorce now? Did I say that?
I don't remember. Rosie mumbled, avoiding eye contact with me.
It's about the money, isn't it? You're panicking because if Ethan and I divorce, your lifestyle will be unsustainable, right? You must know by now that the money sent to you was from my income. You just don't want to lose that.
That's not true.
I just want you to come back. It's too late to say that now. I can't forget the things you've said and done to me, and there's no way I can support you and your son like before. An apology isn't enough to forgive everything.
When I said that, Rosie finally raised her head and looked me in the eyes. As I stared straight at her, Rosie's face twisted in frustration and she looked down again.
Please, reconsider. I'll find a proper job. Okay? It'll be fine, right? You're busy with work, so it's better if we stay together, isn't it?
Seeing Ethan pleading with upturned eyes, I realized I had no feelings left for him.
We're past that point. Honestly, it's very disappointing. But I can't live with you anymore. I have many flaws and things I need to reflect on, but from now on, please cherish your beloved Rosie and live happily together as mother and son. That's what I hope for now. No way!
Glancing at Rosie, I saw her glaring at me. I didn't look away from Rosie and said,
Rosie, isn't it great? Not only did you get rid of the wife you didn't like, but you also got your beloved son back. It's truly a dream come true. I hope you find a wife who will do everything you want someday. Enjoy your life with your son, who thinks he's a big shot in the industry on a $500 salary. Now you can cook him delicious meals every day. You must be so happy, Rosie.
I smiled sweetly as I said this. I thought I heard Rosie mutter,
You devil!
But I pretended not to hear and carried on calmly. Thus, my divorce from Ethan was finalized successfully. Ethan sold the furniture and appliances I left behind and moved back in with his parents, but without an income, the relationship with his parents deteriorated, creating a tense living situation. Now that we're no longer together, I hope he will put serious effort into his current job to make a living. He was just relying on my income, but I'm sure he'll get serious when he's under pressure. I want him to get serious. With a heavy burden lifted off my shoulders, my work has become even more productive, and recently I've been getting orders from various places. Now, I can afford to hire an assistant and have started my own company. There was a bit of a commotion when my company's website and the social media managed by my staff received slanderous comments about my products and me personally, but it was quickly discovered that Rosie was the source of all the negativity. I considered hiring a lawyer to file a lawsuit, but I thought it would be more mentally taxing to deal with Rosie for a long time if I escalated the situation, so I settled for a warning. I want to believe it has been resolved, but if something like this happens again, I won't hold back. Rosie probably blames me for the situation she's in now. Thinking about her obsession makes me shudder, but it doesn't matter anymore. I'm now living a fulfilling life with my team.
Get out of here, you useless thing.
Even as I laid out all the evidence of John's infidelity on the table, his mother Emily just laughed triumphantly. Since I was the one who initiated the divorce, John should technically be the one getting dumped. Yet Emily, far from being apologetic, was rudely trying to kick me out. John, cornered, didn't say a word, his head bowed. I had no expectations left for Emily, who always saw me as an enemy and criticized everything I did, and for John, who not only tolerated but responded to her. I'm moving out today. Emily seemed to hate me, her son's wife, more than she was upset about her son's infidelity. She never tried to reconcile. I went ahead with my moving plans as scheduled, revealing a final secret at the last moment. It was my ultimate revenge against Emily, who mockingly saw me off, and John, who never answered when it mattered. I am Emma. I turned 34 this year. Just a normal housewife who married a sincere man and had an average happy life. We hadn't had kids yet. Children are a gift from heaven. John used to say, so I didn't think much of it. We were a normal couple, but there was one problem that troubled me. It was about Emily. Emily lived close to us. Whenever she showed up around dinner time, I'd be rushed to prepare a meal. Despite eating everything, she constantly complained about the quantity and seasoning of the food.
I've come all this way. Don't you have the decency to serve me something nice?
I'm sorry. Emily would come unannounced almost daily, and always say things like that. Despite my frustration with her remarks, I tried to avoid causing a scene. Moreover, Emily would often say,
"When will you give me a grandchild?"
She seemed to blame me. Perhaps because John is a year younger. Even though John and I agreed that children are a gift, Emily wouldn't listen when I explained.
Are you just saying that because you're hiding some flaw in yourself? That's too much.
No matter what I say, she just keeps nagging me. It's getting nowhere. What used to be a few visits a month became more frequent and longer, becoming nothing but a pain for me. She negates everything I do every day, and I'm just exhausted.
Always like this, and it's not good for me or your mother. Please stop her coming over unannounced.
What's the big deal? We're family. Emma should rely more on our parents.
Rely on them? They do nothing but complain.
It just means they have high expectations of you. No matter how much I try to explain to John. They mean well. That's all he says. Even when I express my displeasure about them coming over without notice. But we're family. He never takes my side. Neither my husband nor Emily tries to see things from my perspective. I realize I'm the only one on my side in this house, and I stop relying on John. Then, one day, as I was returning from shopping, heavier bags in hand than usual, my steps were heavy. Thinking about the possibility of Emily's visit, I bought extra groceries, and the thought of preparing dinner was a burden. Without realizing, I sighed. What's with the gloom? Emily? What?
Is it inconvenient for you that it's me?
I looked up to see Emily, apparently having been waiting in front of the house, glaring at me with her arms crossed. Caught off guard by her even earlier arrival, I involuntarily frowned. She noticed and, narrowing her eyes in displeasure, said,
"Do you hate it so much when I come?"
"Well,
I'm here because my son asked me to. Don't you think it's rude of you to act this way?"
What? What do you mean? I was shocked by her words. When I asked what she meant, she said, "Emma wants Mom to come over. John told her so." I was speechless with John, who, instead of listening to me, had done the exact opposite.
"If you feel that way, you don't have to come over forcibly." Well, what an attitude for me. Acting as if it's harassment when you were the one who wanted it.
I couldn't say outright that I hadn't said such a thing, and even if I claimed John was lying, she wouldn't believe me. So, I just stayed silent, saying nothing. Even when John came home for dinner, Emily kept up her constant complaints about me.
Can you believe it? I go out of my way to visit, and she sighs at me.
Mom, deep down Emma's really happy about it.
That can't be true. If that were the case, why would she try to discourage me from coming?
Even as Emily relayed John's fabricated story, John seemed unconcerned. Instead, he went along with her, making me out to be the bad fellow. I'll talk to Emma later. Mom, just come over whenever you like, as usual.
You're so kind. This wonderful son is wasted on Emma. Showing a little gratitude wouldn't hurt, you know.
She looked satisfied as John saw her off with the words she wanted to hear. She said to me,
John is a good person.
be grateful. After the door closed, I glared at John.
What was all that about earlier?
What do you mean?
Not I'll talk to her later. I've been saying it for a while now. I'm troubled by Emily's sudden visits.
John, feigning ignorance, was met with all the frustration I had been holding back. I couldn't stand him siding with Emily, making me look foolish, not even speaking up for me.
And what's this about me being secretly happy when Emily comes? Who said that?
What's the big deal?
Mom's visits are helping you out, right? Helping me out how? Both of you mocking me while waiting for a meal to be served. What part of that is helpful?
So you're saying you want Mom to never come again? That's rude. She's coming over thinking of you. The conversation with him, who didn't realize the absurdity of his statements and kept making nonsensical remarks, just ran in circles and got nowhere. Far from it, when confronted with the fact that he lied to Emily about me wanting her to visit, he justifies it as thinking it was for the best. Even though we're speaking English, I feel like nothing is getting through to John, and it's making my head spin.
Why would you do something like this? Why would you say that?
I became distrustful of John for deliberately making Emily come to our house. Our communication as a couple was non-existent, and I didn't know what to do, unable to trust him. While I was struggling with this alone, I stumbled upon something unbelievable. I'm going to get a part-time job.
What? Why? If I'm home, I'll have to face Emily all the time. You don't understand, so I have no other choice.
John looked unhappy with my decision, but I had no intention of backing down. Since I have no allies in this house, I decided to make sure I'm away as much as possible. As expected, John quickly gave Emily a spare key in preparation for my absences. It seemed John really wanted Emily to keep an eye on me, even persistently asking about my work hours. If I hadn't known, I would have been startled to see Emily waiting at the entrance, timing it to my return. As soon as I opened the door, there was Emily, arms crossed, looking right at me. I realized instantly that John must have informed her and sighed. Oh. Sighing at the sight of someone, how rude.
You were called here by John, right? Hasn't he returned yet? Didn't you tell him you wanted me to come?
What's with that attitude?
I didn't call for you.
If this had been the old me, I would have just swallowed my dissatisfaction. But now that I've realized even John is against me, I've lost all motivation to do so. It was long past the time John should have been home from work, but he still hadn't returned. Even so, Emily seemed displeased with me starting a part-time job.
Don't use working as an excuse just because you can't have my grandchild. Please don't assume it's my fault we can't have children. There wasn't anything wrong in the tests. Who knows, maybe the tests just didn't show it.
As usual, Emily was saying whatever she wanted in front of me. Even though I started a part-time job and began talking back, which only made Emily angrier, I didn't care what she thought anymore. The part-time job was more than just a way to not be at home. It started when I accidentally saw a woman's name in a notification on John's phone. Seeing that name, I understood everything. John was having Emily monitor me while he went off to cheat. He's probably not coming straight home now, but meeting her instead. I had a reason to be so sure. The name I saw belonged to his ex-girlfriend. I knew it through a mutual friend of ours, and Emily often compared me to her. Emily even bragged. We're still close. So, I clearly remembered her. From this person, there was a message with a heart.
Thanks for Sunday. I want to see you again.
He received a message with a heart emoji. Despite seeing that, I'm not so oblivious as to not notice anything. From the day I saw that, I decided to take revenge on the two of them. I planned to gather evidence using my own money. I could have used John's money, but I didn't want to rely on anything of his. Then, I found out I was pregnant. Although I hesitated, thinking the child was John's, the child was innocent. Confused, but thinking this way, I told John, and he said something hurtful.
A child? Really? Yes, really. I've been to the doctor, there's no mistake. Is it really my child?
What do you mean? Incredibly, upon hearing about my pregnancy, he doubted whether he was the father. How could he think I had the time for such things while being watched by Emily every day? Shocked and at a loss for words, John continued.
You started a part-time job, right? Maybe you found some guy there.
How dare he say that? Just because he's cheating doesn't mean I am too. I wanted to say that but held back and just said, enough. I cut off the conversation and turned my back. I had no more expectations of this man becoming a father. Even Emily, as usual, continued to make me do the housework despite knowing about my pregnancy.
Don't even think about relying on John for housework just because you're pregnant.
He would do anything even if I asked. While preparing meals, I endured her heartless words. John, seeing his wife like this, said nothing and just watched TV. I had endured it all this time because I was alone, but I couldn't take it anymore. This environment wasn't good for a child. Unable to bear it any longer, I secretly called my parents' house at night. I explained everything and asked for help for the sake of the baby in my belly. My brother Michael offered his support. I'm glad you told me. Thanks for relying on me. Leave the rest to your brother. I had feared they might be angry for not speaking up sooner. But instead of anger, my family offered me words of comfort. I had been so determined to show no weakness to anyone. The tears I had been holding back finally fell. With Michael's help, I prepared for my counterattack. In front of Emily, I demanded a divorce from John.
I know you've been cheating all along. I want a divorce.
That's troublesome. I won't divorce.
What are you saying? Why resist after betraying me?
I had thought John would easily agree to a divorce if his infidelity was exposed, but surprisingly, he was reluctant. I wondered if he still had feelings for me, but his words were again unreasonable. Because she can't do housework. His words filled me with anger. At the same time, I felt embarrassed for having even a slight hope. This man, who questioned if the baby was
my child,
and tried to erase his behavior, couldn't possibly have any affection for me. I was at my limit with his selfishness and Emily's silence in the face of all this.
What's that supposed to mean? I'm not a housekeeper. Don't be so presumptuous.
Hey, what kind of tone is that to take with John? What is the right way to behave towards a cheater like him? She says anything to me, but never a word to John. In front of her, I scattered the evidence of John's affair all over the table. These were photos taken by a detective I hired with the money I saved from my part-time job. While I was working or being insulted by Emily, John was happily meeting his ex-girlfriend. There were even photos of them coming out of a hotel, irrefutable evidence. Emily was initially silent, but as she came to her senses, she lashed out at me.
It's because you're such a terrible wife that he cheated. I always thought that girl was cuter and better for him than you.
So, you're in favor of the divorce then? Furious at me, Emily was actually justifying John's affair. I quickly pulled out the pre-filled divorce papers. John, despite his complaints, was hurried by me and Emily and seemed to have no choice but to sign.
Are you satisfied now? Get out, you useless thing.
Yes, I'm moving out now. Right this instant. As I sent a message on my phone, the front door opened, and the movers came in cheerfully. Among them was Michael. Long time no see, John.
What? What's going on? I knew it would come to this, so I had already asked Michael to help with the move.
I had previously explained the situation to Michael, who works in a moving company, and his colleagues, and asked them to pack and move my belongings. As I directed them to my stuff, they efficiently carried out the furniture, leaving John and Emily stunned. I had them move the dresser I bought before marriage and the appliances my parents bought for me without any hesitation. John could only look bewildered as the kitchen became empty. Without saying anything to John, who looked so pitiful, I asked Michael to take the sofa. Even the small sofa Emily used as if it was her own was taken out right in front of her.
Are you taking everything?
These were bought with our parents' money for my sister. Michael, towering over her, looked coldly at Emily, who, unable to confront him, glared at me instead. After all the belongings were moved, and as I was about to get into the car, Emily, seemingly regaining her composure, came out to see me off, laughing.
We don't need a wife with no manners like you.
Is that so? Well, I'm done with this mother and son too. Though I retorted with a smile, my anger at John, who wouldn't say anything, and Emily, who comforted him, didn't subside. So, I decided to drop one last bombshell. Oh, by the way, Emily, do you know why John chose his ex-girlfriend as his affair partner?
Obviously, she must be more capable than you.
Turns out, she can't have children. That's why she was convenient for him. Meaning, Emily's long-awaited grandchild wouldn't be coming from that relationship. Emily's eyes widened in shock at my words. I couldn't help but laugh at her expression. John, who apparently hadn't expected this to be revealed, looked at me, pale-faced. How did you know that? How? You talked about it with her, didn't you? John, what are you thinking?
It's not like that, Mom. Listen to me.
Emily was evidently upset at the prospect of not having a grandchild, and they began to argue. It seemed John hadn't expected Emily to turn against him. Watching them flounder, I smirked. Annoyed things weren't going his way, John glared at me. Don't trouble her. I'm the one getting divorced.
After all the trouble you've caused me? Of course, I'll be claiming alimony in the divorce settlement, so be prepared.
Stop it. She's never worked anything but part-time.
So what? And shouldn't you be worrying about yourself? You'll be paying too.
John's defense of his ex-girlfriend wavered as soon as money was mentioned. When I hinted at what was to come, they both started calling me greedy. It was laughable how brazen they were after all they had done. I couldn't stay with such people any longer. As I was about to finally get in the car, Emily shouted.
Then at least give us your child. After you give birth, we'll take it.
What kind of logic is that?
It's our grandchild. I can't let a wife with such a terrible character raise it. Who knows what kind of adult they'll become?
No way. If they're raised in this house, they'll end up like an adult who cheats. I laughed it off, and Emily, unable to retort, fell silent. Feeling refreshed at her reaction, I left my house behind with Michael's help. Later, I heard that the ex-girlfriend told John, I can't pay the divorce settlement. It's impossible. Predictably, she dumped John and disappeared.
So, I'm going to change and do better. I want you to come back.
I don't understand what you mean by so. Stop saying silly things. It seemed John, disliking the idea of paying both the divorce settlement and child support, thought I would come back and save him the trouble. He was a man of unfathomable thoughts, but probably hadn't thought things through. As I sighed over the phone, Michael, who was listening, couldn't hold back and took the phone from me. I've heard enough. The reason for the divorce is your foolishness. Reflect on it a bit. Realizing Michael's sternness, John, already frightened by the moving incident, quickly hung up. Thanks to Michael pushing for the payment, the divorce settlement was smoothly settled. After the divorce, I'm now taking my time at my parents' house with my newborn baby. By the way, from Emily as well. I want to see my grandchild. You must understand how lonely I feel as a grandmother. Mom received the phone call crying and pleading for help. Mom, being well aware of the situation, said, After saying you don't need such a wife and kicking her out, how dare you say that? She yelled over the phone like Michael and hung up. Let us know if you need anything. Families are there to help each other. Yes, thank you. I need to be strong too. When I was in that house, I felt alone and burdened. But now, I have a supportive family. Determined to be strong for my child, I'm working hard and moving forward.